All right, so I'm here with Mr. Charles Mayfield, the founder of Farrow, and you can find Charles at farrow.life. Thank you for being here, Mr. Charles.
My pleasure. Did you hit record while I was gone? Are we recording?
I'm recording, yeah. It's not on
Perfect.
Zoom, but it's on my OBS.
Gotcha. I just want to
Yeah,
make sure we capture all this magic.
whenever I record on Zoom, it doesn't seem to work. I can't find the clip.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Let's see. We've known each other now officially for 2 months.
That's right. I met Charles at a health conference a couple months ago in Boca Raton, and he had some very nice things to say about pigs. So we're going to talk about pigs. We're going to talk about the history of lard and why pigs are central to his skincare. So, Charles, you're out in Tennessee, right?
I am. I'm in East Tennessee. If you're from Tennessee, you do generally tend to describe it in three sections: east, middle, and west. So I'm over in the Appalachians side of the house. Born and raised here, had a 20 some odd year stint in Atlanta, but back up here in God's country, as we call it.
And what do you like about that area of the world?
A lot of things that Southern Charm is actually the name of. So I'm from Athens, Tennessee, nicknamed the Friendly City. Fairly progressive. East Tennessee, despite a lot of rumors, is a fairly progressive part of the world, and yeah, it's just beautiful. We have four wonderful seasons. We just got lambasted with about 7 or 8 inches of snow. I don't know, about a month ago,
Mm-hmm.
which is a once in a sort of decade situation around here. So
Really?
we're not covered in snow every year. Um, but yeah, beautiful, beautiful. The Smoky Mountains, Appalachian Mountains are
Mm.
beautiful and convenient to lots of big cities. I'm 2.5 hours from Atlanta, 3 hours from Nashville, 3 hours from Charlotte. If I got to be somewhere, my day job takes me on the road quite a bit. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Tennessee, and for those that are listening, we're obviously interested in any refugees that want to come here, but we don't need any more uh, uh, what's the term I'm looking for? Missionaries. We don't need missionaries. We'll take
Oh, I see.
refugees.
So
Uh,
you guys are welcoming over there.
to refugees, yes,
Refugees, I gotcha.
yes. We'll take refugees. We don't need any more missionaries. Um, but no,
How's
it's
the soil out in those parts? Good place for someone to start a little homestead for himself?
could be. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got. I would say East Tennessee is, especially East Tennessee is what we would classify as not optimal agricultural land. There's plenty of it, but it's not. We got a lot of hills and a lot of rocks and a
Mm.
lot of elevation change, foothills, um, and so marginal land is the term used. We have a lot of marginal agricultural land,
Mm.
which when you're in the business of raising, beef, pork, chicken, is ideal. Marginal land, for your listeners that don't know, is categorically classified based on whether or not you can run a plow through it and plant, you know, corn, soy, wheat, or cotton. Um, so
And
yeah,
land that is marginal, you would not be able to plow.
well, preferentially you would not want to. Plows are expensive. Um, plows are, it's a lot of work. It's terrible for the soil, by the way. So, perhaps the foothills of East Tennessee are the one thing protecting us. But
Well, I mean, when you say that land is marginal, does that mean the topography is not conducive to plowing?
It's what it's implying. Okay, so that's a great question. I love that. So marginal is a term applied to land, the highest and best agricultural use of land. I'm using some air quotes there. Um, right now is typically defined by, can you grow corn, soy, and wheat on it?
Hmm.
And so marginal land, this definition that we're trying to sort of button up for everyone, marginal land is land that is more difficult, if not impossible, to plant those crops on because it is rocky, hilly, the list goes sort of on and
I
on. You
see what
want
you're
you
saying.
want flat, you know, rolling hills, maybe a little bit of undulation, higher ground, you don't want it flooding. When it comes to, again, what's defined as high margin or high value agricultural land.
I
Um,
gotcha. And marginal land is good for pigs and livestock because, or it's not necessarily bad for raising
no, it's
livestock.
it's
Oh,
ideal.
it's ideal.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at,
You
if you
don't
look
want
at
you don't want
natural
flat land
systems,
for livestock.
um, show me well, no, you can have flat land too. I mean, look at the corn belt in America. Drive over to Missouri or Iowa or Nebraska and drive around. Um, yeah, you can have plenty of flat land um, for livestock.
Hmm.
That's great. So what are the challenges with flat land? Well, high winds can create some problems. No shade. Some animals really, really, really
Sure.
like shade.
Yeah.
And so, there's challenges with every, nook and cranny of I would say agricultural land. The beauty of sort of the regenerative model is Mother Nature's got a template for pretty much any environment, short of the the North and South poles, you know. But we see animals thriving, from all the way up in Saskatchewan and Canada, all the way down to the tip of South America and everywhere in between. So nature's often has a formula that works. We just have to tune into it.
Sure. And so you used to raise pigs for quite a while, isn't that right?
I did. I spent about 6, 7 years raising beef, pasture-based beef, pork, and chicken. We do a batch of turkeys every year as well. And yeah, it absolutely um, formidable in my mid to late 40s, no less. But man, what an amazing learning experience, and man, I miss it. Candidly, not farming presently, but yes, I raised what you would call a multi-species meat production farm.
And I know that because while we were in Boca, one of the women there actually had one of the recipe books that you authored, and you had all your pictures of your farm in there, and it was pretty coincidental. But it seems like you've been in the health space for quite some time. How did your journey come about in that regard?
Man, that's a great question.
So you were doing
The
that. You wrote that. You did that book. What was it? 10, 15 years ago, before kind of
Gosh,
paleo kind of caught hold.
well, so I, like many situations in life, I had a divorce. I was divorced. I had just recently gotten divorced. I was a little out of shape. This is in my early 30s,
Okay.
and it sort of a couple things came together, and I ended up buying. I bid on and purchased a free month or 2 months, or maybe it was 3 months. I forget. Boot camp. Boot camps. This is 2006, seven, and boot camps in Atlanta. I was living in Atlanta at the time. Were becoming outdoor boot camps had just sort of cracked this is kind of cool. And so bought one. It just happened that the boot camp I was a part of had just opened. I know you've heard of this. Had just opened the third CrossFit gym in the city of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And so got early exposure. This is 2007, 8. Got early exposure for the East Coast in the CrossFit scene. That introduced my second wife, Julie. The CrossFit scene introduced us together to one another. It also introduced us to a gentleman by the name of Rob Wolf, who I call the Michael Corleone of the paleo movement. And so, yeah, we got to be fast friends with Rob and Nikki on the heels of Rob's first book, The Paleo Solution, coming out. And I'll add, I was a very accomplished CrossFitter early on until I got hurt, and I got hurt pretty bad. Really, well, I don't know.
Training?
It's all, yeah. Overtraining, I would say, and poor form and all the things, but hurt my back pretty bad. And so I went from 2 workouts a day most of the time to 0. And that was really what sparked, hey, maybe we should go take this CrossFit nutrition certification and sort of figure out, because I'm not working out, every day now. I don't want to add back all this weight I've lost. And so, at the time, the CrossFit scene was very heavy Barry Sears zone diet. Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, and Barry Sears, I think were pretty good buddies. And candidly, the zone is a really fascinating nutritional protocol, especially at a high performance athletic sort of side of the house.
What are the basics of that one?
The basics are you have blocks, protein, carbs, and fat. So you got your number of blocks per your macros, in other words, and depending on your athleticism, depending on your lean body mass, depending on your activity levels, you could dial in or up or down your blocks. And everybody had a certain number of blocks. And the good thing about I think the good thing about the zone was that it really did sort of lay out a formula that you could follow, and it made overeating difficult, right? And it also made dialing in, fat heavy versus carb heavy versus protein heavy. It made dialing that stuff in. It systematized eating. It just wasn't clean your plate. It was like your plate is weighed and measured out, right? So at the highest levels of performance, it made a lot of sense. But that's at the highest levels of performance. On the downside, it's just like hopping on the scale every day. For your listeners that don't know this, the body weight scale in your bathroom is lying to you every time you get on it, right? And so we psych ourselves
wait a second. Out. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I know this either.
Oh yeah, the scale lies to you.
What do you mean by that?
It's not that it does that on purpose, but people get hyper focused on a number, okay? And the problem with that number is it can fluctuate.
Yes.
Due to nothing you have control over, right? Yeah. You got 10 minutes more of sleep, or you haven't pooped in 2 hours, or there's this list of a million variables that are sort of out of your control that will ultimately drive, you get on the scale the same time every day. That number is going to fluctuate irregardless of everything else doing.
Yeah, usually a few pounds, yeah.
Oh, for sure. 5 to 10%. It can, when you
that much?
The variance, when you think about the variance, the high end versus the low end, let's call it 5%.
Okay.
So on a 200-pound person, right? you're talking about a 10-pound fluctuation that you have no control over.
Hmm.
And so if you're, again, it's to take all of this with a grain of salt, but
Sure.
the reality is if you're hyper obsessed with a number,
I see what you're
then
saying. Yeah.
you're going to end up chasing stuff. And so with Barry Sears and the Zone, you know, I have a tendency to get a little obsessive compulsive with things. And so, when you have to ask yourself, how effective is a diet for the dieter. I'm not out here. I'm just trying to like sort of live my life and thrive, but I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not any of these things. But when you're counting the number of almonds you can eat for your snack at lunch, you have to sort of ask
People
yourself,
still do that,
oh,
like caloric restriction and that sort of thing.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. So
Yeah.
Rob was the first person to, I mean, he ran the nutritional certification for CrossFit HQ. And so he was the first person to introduce us to the idea of the paleo diet. This would have been 2010, January of 2010. And yeah, we just started playing with recipes. And so when Rob's book launched, The Paleo Solution, when it launched, I want to say that was 2010. We had developed a great relationship with Rob and Nikki, and had been paleoifying a bunch of different recipes, and on the heels of his book launching, he decided to anoint us with the task of writing a follow-up paleo cookbook.
Mm.
And I got to tell you, Brian, I have to give CrossFit and then Rob and then the paleo scene really credit for pointing my interests toward regenerative farming.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So in the early days there was a conference in Texas, Austin, Texas, called Paleo FX, and I think the inaugural conference was 2012. And it just grew and grew and grew, but I've never missed a Paleo FX, and they're not doing them anymore. But in the first, I'll never forget this. In the first 2 or 3 years of Paleo FX, you'd have various practitioners there and people espousing their particular nutritional, dogma. And everyone's sitting there arguing over protein, carbs, and fat, micros and macros. And it was as if all of a sudden there was like this big exhale, right? Collective exhale. And it was like, what the hell are we doing, folks? Let's talk about food sustainability. Let's talk about sourcing high quality food. And so the narrative really shifted,
Hmm.
Not that it completely shifted away from nutrition. It just we pointed the lens and the light at what I believe are truly more pressing issues, which is, are we going to be able to grow food and source food, and where does that come from? And so this is where you started to see the Weston A. Price Foundation had a booth there. Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund had a booth there. White Oak Pastures would be there, and and some really cool Epic provisions. I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with Epic bars. They debuted their
The
products
jerky, right? The meat.
That's right. Yeah, sort of a jerky based product. Yeah, and so food sourcing and protecting the freedoms associated with growing real food became really big issues, topics in this sort of uh, ecosphere, or just ecology of health and wellness. And so I
So you're big into just transforming the agricultural system that we use today.
Well, it's broken.
Yeah.
And it's actually worse than that. It's not even that it's broken. It's that the more we use it, the more we're uh, degrading our ability to grow food. We're absolutely swimming in a soup of toxic, chemical laden, junk. It's so yes, I am 100% invested in highlighting the benefits and really the necessity of regenerative farming in an effort to not only feed our community the highest the food with the highest nutrient density, but also food that during the process of producing it actually is less reliant on chemical fertilizers, is
Mm.
less reliant on herbicides and fungicides, and is also the most ecologically nourishing food. And so that's regenerative farming in a nutshell. Farrow, our skincare company, is built on sort of the foundation of this is how you should be raising animals.
Hmm.
Um, I would. In fact, I'm writing an article on this right now. I would say that regenerative farming is a buzz phrase these days. You hear it in a lot of different circles, and good. I'm glad to hear holistic land management and regenerative farming and all these different phrases. Um, I would contend that you cannot have a viable agricultural system without animals. Period. Um, so there's a lot of rhetoric in the world right now. Cow farts are
Sure.
ruining the country or ruining the climate, and there's just a lot of
That's a very
can't.
narrow-minded view, isn't it? We need that. We need
Well,
animals
it's
around.
wrong. It's
Yeah.
it's like a lot of the stuff that the professionals have been espousing for the last 4, 5, 10, in the case of our nutritional policy, 60 years, right? Be fearful of fat. Well, give me a freaking break, man. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yes, it's like a lot of the rhetoric you hear from the gated institutions that have your best interest at heart. Whatever they say, you can almost point your finger 180 degrees in the other direction. And so,
I'd have to agree
and
with that.
yep. And so the beauty of regenerative agriculture, so regenerative agriculture builds soil. Okay. At my fundamental foundational level, it works with nature to efficaciously and in a nourishing way build soil.
Mm.
Okay. And there's no better method on the planet at building soil than grazing herbivores, ruminant animals, followed by birds. There's just no better template
Birds,
on the planet. Birds. So birds
like
are Mother
chickens too,
Nature's.
or just
Chickens are a bird. So in the agricultural model, right? That would be chickens or turkeys
hmm.
or ducks,
Yeah.
right? Um, but yes, the role they play is sanitation. So they come in behind these. So think about America. Think about where we grow corn right now in America,
Hmm.
and rewind the clock about 500 years. Okay, 500 years ago. Well, this is obviously pre first contact or pretty close to pre first contact. Okay. But you had, by all accounts, and we have a lot of literature on this, you had herds of bison,
Yeah.
okay, numbering in the millions.
Wow, that
Like,
much?
oh, oh, yeah. If you've never read Jared Diamond's books, 1491 and 1492, Guns, Germs, and Steel, and then there's a number of books on the settlement
Mm.
of like the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, in the early days of colonization, where again, still, we hadn't gone through and completely slaughtered, the bison herds. And so it's been estimated that I think the Americas, so this is, well, North America. So this is the continent of North America. It's been estimated supported about 300 million people
Hmm.
prior to Columbus's first contact. Supported about 300, was populated, inhabited by about 300 million people. And I forget how many, uh, I want to say it was like several
Wait a
hundred.
sec. Don't we have 300 million people in America right now?
Yes.
And you're saying before first contact, the natives, they
Smallpox knocked the population of North America down by about 90%. And that happened in 12 months.
that was after the English
First
came,
contact. It
yeah.
was first contact. Yep. And the same thing happened to the South America.
Is that a controversial opinion about this
Of
300
course it
million
is.
number?
It's a controversial number, but
Okay.
I mean,
'Cause I don't think I've heard that big number before.
well, it's not hard to imagine. It's not hard to imagine understanding that we do have documented history on what the Black Plague did to Europe.
Hmm.
Okay, we're talking about some seriously nasty bugs if you don't have immunity to them, right? I mean, we're talking really, really nasty stuff.
Hmm.
Okay. And so we have historical evidence. Again, there weren't a lot of historians writing books in North America 500 years ago, right? But 500 years ago, there were plenty of people documenting the Black Plague or any of these other, modernized viruses
Hmm.
and bugs, and the impact that had on um, the local population. And so it is thought that from a population of people standpoint, right, that by the time Columbus came back, by the time the settlers really made landfall in the United States, that about 90% of the people were not here anymore. Now, the animals were
Interesting.
still here, and you can go back and you can study, you can read about accounts of these herds of millions, literally. So there were way more bison on the landscape in North America 500 years ago, okay, than all the domestic pigs and cows combined we have in the United States today.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I love reading about that time period.
oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. I've got to prepare a talk for this. I'm going to be in Austin in May for Hack Your Health. I'd
Uh-huh.
love that'd be a fun one to see you there. But I've got to give a talk, and I'm preparing this talk, and it's about lard, and I'm trying to like contextualize things, and it's so hard because we're so far removed from, lard was it. At the turn of the century, everyone knew about lard all
Hmm.
the time because it was the preeminent cooking oil, period.
Hmm.
Crisco is white because they bleached it to make it look like lard.
Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They were
Yeah,
trying to emulate lard.
that's right. And tallow is like so for your listeners that don't know, tallow is the rendered visceral fat from a ruminant animal, predominantly a cow, but you can have tallow from sheep or elk or deer or
Hmm.
any herbivorous ruminant species.
And what do you mean by visceral?
Well, we have two primary types of fat. Um, Everyone's familiar with subcutaneous fat. That is your belly fat, the back fat. That's the fat on the pork chop that You want that half-inch fat cap. That's the pinch an inch. That's subcutaneous fat.
Got it.
And then inside your organs, in the sac that holds, your organs are all enclosed inside your body. They're all wrapped up. And inside of there, you have what is called visceral fat. And visceral fat's primary function is to act as a sort of an airbag seatbelt system for your organs, padding and protection. I'm guessing that has, over the gazillions of years, we've evolved to protect, our most vital organs, kidneys. You know this, everyone, your listeners probably know this. It's hard to live without a kidney. It's really, really hard to live without both kidneys. Okay. These are very, very precious organs, and they function very differently than the liver, right? The liver, I mean, Lord, you could donate, I could cut my liver in half, give you half of my liver, Brian, and in 6 months' time, I've got a brand new, grown all the way back functioning liver, and so do you, right? Kidneys don't work like that.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, I think we've been endowed by our creator with some pretty smart software, and part of that software is to pad these very critical organs in such a way that if we do, bump into something or fall out of a tree or have to wrestle a lion or whatever the case may be, that we don't have to worry about necessarily our organs getting super bruised.
So yeah, the visceral fat is in that area of the kidneys, right? It surrounds the kidneys. Correct. Mostly. Yeah.
But predominantly surrounds, it's called suet with right. Beef. It's called suet. That's the name for the fat that, and it, if you saw visceral fat looks like an organ. It's solid fat encased in a membrane.
Okay.
Now, again, that's very, very different than subcutaneous fat.
Yeah.
The fat on bacon, everyone's cooked bacon. That fat that you see on the bacon, that's subcutaneous fat. It's sort of layered in with muscle, and the muscle and the fat on a prime or on a ribeye or New York strip or anything. That's all subcutaneous fat. And one of the big reasons why it's important to talk. Go ahead.
Do we make tallow? You said we make tallow from the visceral fat, the suet?
Correct.
Do we not make it at all from subcutaneous fat?
With a cow, no.
Really? Okay.
No. I'm not saying we didn't used to. I'm not sure what they're using. So, all right, in a natural system. All right, just to understand. With cows, you have the industrial system, and then you have a natural system.
Okay.
In a natural system, it is damn hard for a cow to put on extra fat. Okay. In our industrial model, we send them off to the feedlot. Okay. And we feed them stuff that they have no business eating, and it makes them sick. And sickness promotes. First of all, it's caloric. It's just like go to the buffet line. So it's a caloric overload, and they get unwell, so they sort of just balloon up. But in the meat production world, most, if not all, of the subcutaneous fat, which again it's hard to pack on. In a natural system, it's not impossible, but takes a little while.
Sure.
But even over here in the feedlot system, you have a couple months to pack that stuff on. This is cows, right? Or sheep or goats or any of those. Most of that fat in the manufacturing process is most easily and readily put into the grind. So, ground meat. Right. And so with a grind, you've got, the leanest I've ever seen was like a 95.5, and you'll see it all the way up to like a 75.25 or 70.30 lean muscle to fat ratio.
So that's the trimmings of subcutaneous fat that they're adding in with the meat. They make a mix for your ground beef, right?
Correct. Yep. And so, and one of the more important distinctions between these two fats, in my opinion, is because of the biological function of those fats. Okay. So with us and with cows, with all mammals, okay, the biological function of visceral fat is padding and protecting your organs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The biological function of subcutaneous fat is to store calories, excess calories, store vitamins and minerals, right? Most commonly, in the case of humans or any other mammal, store vitamin D, right? We are very good at storing. We're very good at converting. I love these conversations, man. We're very good as a species at converting excess carbohydrates into subcutaneous fat.
Mm-hmm.
We're very, very, very good at it. Okay. And if you think about why, here's why. In most climates on the planet, outside of the tropics, but in most climates and including the tropics, you have about a 3 to 4 month window where carbonaceous, sugary things are in season. I'm talking about fruiting and edible. So you got a 2 to 3 to 4 month window tops. Okay. Well, we need to be able to eat that in excess and store it up, because when December hits, there ain't nothing to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so subcutaneous fat is our storage fat. Here's another one, Brian. So I love this example. You've been to the store and you've bought a ribeye steak.
Okay.
Yeah. And then every now and then you've got a buddy and he grows, he grows his own meat. And so every now and then you get one of these, super high quality grass finished steaks, and you stack them up side by side. And over here, the store-bought steak, the fat cap is white. And over here, this grass finished, pasture raised all the way steak, the fat is yellow. And you think, what's going on here? Well, that yellow is representative of stored beta carotene, okay, in the cow's diet, that when that cow goes off to the feedlot is devoid of any beta carotene, right? Because where does that come from? It comes from these green leafy, forbs and tubers and grasses and, this perennial pasture. That's where beta carotene comes from. And so in the absence of that cow leaches the stored beta carotene out of its fat stores so that it can feed its internal systems and maintain some resemblance of health in an otherwise, just awful situation dietarily. Make sense?
Yeah, you first mentioned that to me, when we first met, and I didn't realize that the fat on grass-fed meat actually was colored yellowish. But now that you said that and I look at it, I do notice that. I'm curious that if we are not, we go through the summer, we have this abundance of food, we store up these vitamins. Why is that only the case with fat soluble vitamins? We're not going to be getting a lot of these water soluble vitamins, the vitamin C, vitamin B through the winter. And the body doesn't store these water soluble vitamins. So how does...
Well, there's a ton of vitamin C in red meat.
Okay.
It's one of the unsung heroes.
Sure.
There's this carnivore keto movements,
and I guess liver has all the B vitamins, and So okay, yeah, that makes sense then.
Well, I mean, Brian, if you, and again, this is all in the history books, but if you look at wild animals and if you look at humans and you look at what was prior, and you can see this today, you can see this with hunters, there are still a handful of hunter gatherer, societies and cultures on the planet.
Mhm.
Weston A. Price and his foundation, I mean, his work is foundational to sort of uncovering a lot of this,
Sure.
but preferentially, you kill an animal, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, preferentially, if you killed that animal, you were eating the brain, you were
Mhm.
eating the liver. We ate the meat was in many cases the last thing we would eat.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh, yeah. And so,
No, I
you know,
understand that from our standpoint in eating meat, but what about, we're talking about the animals, how they actually store
mhm.
these fat soluble vitamins A, D, E in their fat. Are they getting much of the water soluble vitamins in the winter when there's, not any fresh grass around? Where,
Probably
where are they
not.
getting those vitamins from?
Yeah, probably not.
Probably
I
not.
mean,
Yeah.
but again, it's all about context. Like 500 years ago, right? Um, they would not be wintering in an area that didn't have any food.
There you go. Yeah.
They
They would
and
migrate
and,
south, right?
and well, they would migrate south, or um, you I mean, if you go out to Montana, okay, you look around and it's dry, it's arid, and everything is frozen solid, for 4 months out of the year.
Hmm.
Okay. But dry and arid preserves nutrients. So grasses in Montana can grow and die on the vine, senescence,
Hmm.
so these grasses grow up through the growing season and then they die, but it's so dry out there that all the nutrients in that grass are stable. There's
Interesting.
no right. Okay. Now here in East Tennessee, okay, it's wet. Now we're not covered in the winter with 2 feet of snow. So, and you have cool season grasses. And so every climate has a solution. The point I'm making is in a natural system, if there's no food, you go where the food is.
Yeah.
So much of our agricultural model today, especially the model that everyone sees, is so far from natural.
Mm.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just so, I mean, pigs in houses, chickens in houses, really? Give me a break, dude. Um, and so in that environment that you're talking about, where it's cold, well, if it's cold, one of two things has happened. First of all, they didn't just wake up one morning and it was cold,
Yeah.
right? Today it got a little colder, and then the next day in the sun. And I mean, animals are way more clued into the seasons and the seasonality and what's coming and what's
Sure.
not than we are. And so in a natural system, they'd have two things that most animals don't have today. They had predators, okay, which pushed them. So these animals would never stay anywhere for very long because of
Hmm.
predation. And then they had, again, they had in the case of most of these animals, what we're talking about is ruminant uh, herd pack animals, herd animals. So they had their herd and then they had predators. And so, you had this dance, if you will,
Yeah.
across the landscape, and they'd follow the food. And so those bison that we were talking about earlier, I'm guessing that in the winter months of North America, I'm guessing they were in Mexico a lot.
Yeah.
And then as everything warmed up, it's not a switch. It's a gradual process, and so they start in Mexico, and then by the fall, those bison are all the way up in the Dakotas
Yeah.
because they've just followed the seasonality of their food.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about pigs, but before we move on from cows, I have one question because you did mention White Oak Farms, and I just wanted to get your opinion on how important White Oak Farms they have.
White Oak Pastures.
White Oak Pastures.
Yep.
They sell in my local health food store. They are 100% grass fed. However, they're not certified organic. So, and we see that a lot with beef. You get the grass fed, not organic. How important is that with quality and purchasing beef?
I love this question. I I got to say a couple things here, Brian. Number one, first, well, full disclosure, I'll be at White Oak Pastures in 2 days. I'm going down there. I've got to speak. I am intimately familiar with the Harris family. I've known Will for a number of years. They are dear, sweet, wonderful people. Have been very gracious and generous to me over the years in terms of knowledge. And so,
are they in South Carolina?
No, they're in Bluffton, Georgia. They're about an hour and a half. They're about an hour and a half north of Tallahassee, Florida.
Is that the one where you can go and they have like all these cabins that you can like actually stay on the farm?
Yep. Oh yeah.
That's
yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
That looked pretty cool.
I'll be overnighting there Thursday night. I'll be
nice
down there. So okay. So just full disclosure, big fan. Have a lot of nice things to say about them. But here's the point I wanted to make. There is it's not too much because you want to emphasize proper diet, but there is way too much emphasis on what animals eat and not nearly enough emphasis on how the animals live. So,
okay.
You raised a great question. White Oak Pastures. It's not certified organic. Okay, well, how would you certify organic a pasture? Because if it's beef, right? If it's beef, then we're talking about certified organic pastures, right? I don't know how you would get around certifying a pasture or a bunch of pastures as organic. Now,
well, when it's done, is it not?
Maybe
there are organic, grass-fed organic beef that you can buy.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't know. I guess.
Okay, you're not familiar with the criteria for that, I guess.
I'm reasonably familiar with the criteria for organic labels.
I'll add one thing. One thing that I know about organic certification is that if you have treated wood on the property, you cannot
get it.
It can't be certified organic. So that's one thing that I'm thinking why a lot of these beef producers are not certified. That might be one thing.
Yeah. So well, but I also think it drives
everyone builds with treated wood.
Oh yeah. Well, this is going to drive the point I'm trying to make home even harder. Like, okay, so let's get into food labels. Right? So okay, so you said certified organic. Okay, when it comes to ruminants, okay, so again, this is multi-chambered, stomached, multigastric animals that are herbivores. So, again, most commonly a cow, but you've also got, lamb, goat, which is, by the way, the goat is the most popular meat globally. We don't eat any goat in the U.S., but globally it's the most
I've only had it once.
Eaten meat. Yeah.
A couple times.
I love it. I love goat. It's fantastic. It's like everything else. It's got to be cooked right.
In the Middle East and out that way.
Oh my God,
it's all goat. Right?
Goat is goat. Yes,
and goat herders, sheep herders.
Yep, absolutely. So, all the ruminant animals. Okay, then over on the other side of the house, you've got pigs and chickens. You got turkeys and some other stuff, but the monogastric omnivore side of the house is dominated by pigs, pork, and chicken in a grocery store setting. Okay. I would argue over there, it's a little easier to have this organic label,
Okay.
right? Because you're feeding those animals. You're feeding them grain-based, typically grain-based. Now, in a pastured setting, they're also able to go out and forage, right? But in the industrial setting, I'm in a house, no sunshine, no fresh air, water, and here's my feed,
Sure.
and all the poop that I'm creating. Okay. My point is simply that we don't talk enough about how the animal is raised. And Brian, I can tell you right now, if whatever you define, here we go, whatever you define as the optimal diet and the highest quality foods that Brian can get his hands on, okay? And I promise you that, 3 square meals a day for the next 3 months, okay, you're going to get, filet mignon and grass finished butter and all whatever. You set the parameters, okay? You're going to get this every day. Perfect amount of calories, all the things. But Brian, you're going to have to go live in this closet. It's a 6x6 room. It's poorly ventilated. You're not going to see the sun. Okay, we'll bring you some, something to read every now and then. But
Okay.
you're going to have to
Little reading
live
light.
in this closet with 4 of your best friends. Okay, I don't know where y'all are going to go to the bathroom, but you're gonna eat the very best food by your definition that we can feed you every day for the next 3 months. But you can't leave this room, okay? And you don't get to see the sun. My question is, how healthy are you coming out of that experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the answer is not.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we put all the emphasis on what are we feeding the animal, and none of the emphasis on how is the animal interacting with the sun. Just the sun. The sun is incredibly important to us.
Mm-hmm.
For of course, now, again, back to the climate change craziness. Now they're telling us we need to block the sun. And it depends on, what black pill World Economic Forum, web page you want to read. Sorry, didn't mean to.
So you're saying we shouldn't block the sun?
I am saying that we need to, we need to absolutely hope and pray that we have more sunlight. More sunlight. I need more. I'm with you. Anyway,
yeah,
yes.
I hear you on that, but I just wonder, because there are some farms that are certified organic, and I wonder if it's, again, maybe it's just the treated wood situation, or I don't know, maybe some farms, do they spray herbicides on their pastures at all? Is that a thing? I don't know.
Well, so I would say that when the certified organic label first debuted, it was, with the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And so I think early on, it meant a lot. It has meant less and less every single year because these multinational super rich and full of lobbyist companies have figured out how to gamify. But Brian, I can go to the store right now and I can buy a New York strip steak that is labeled product of the U.S. There's a stamp on that package, product of the United States of America.
Let me guess, it was only processed in the U.S.
Oh, no, it wasn't even processed in the United States.
No, it's even worse.
That animal was born, raised, and died in Guatemala, okay? They killed it, okay? They cut it up. They ship it to America, and once it gets here, they pull it out of the cutting, out of the wrapper, and they do something else to it. So, they sent us a half a beef.
They put a sticker on it.
We butcher it. We anoint it with our good vibrations.
Uh-huh.
If that meat spends 24 hours in a USDA anointed facility in this country, then you can legally label that product of the U.S.
Wow.
Okay, so if we live in an environment where that's okay,
yeah.
If we live in an environment where you can label chicken okay, chicken, hormone and antibiotic free because you injected the hormones and the antibiotics into the egg before it
Oh
hatched.
man.
If we live in a world where that's okay, then what the hell does certified organic even mean?
I saw a video one time. It was, I think, on the show How It's Made, about how
Mm.
they make, I think it was chicken wings. And the chickens were literally, or the eggs were literally on a conveyor belt, coming down a conveyor belt, being injected with God knows what. Eventually they hatch, still, going down the conveyor belt. It was just a amazing thing to see. I mean, I know we talk about conventional industrialized chickens and other livestock, but to see, I mean, this was literally like they were packaging goods, and it was crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got to feed the world, man. Got to feed the world.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about pigs, your favorite animal.
Hands down. Hands
Hands
down.
You're
Well, I
very,
mean, they're
very
my favorite
affectionate towards
domestic.
pigs.
They're my favorite domestic farm animal.
Your favorite domestic farm animal. Okay.
Yeah.
So when did humans start raising pigs? And what's the difference between the wild hogs and pigs that we raise on a farm today? Is that a sort of a different species? Is it a hybrid, or what happened there?
Yeah. So, again, varying accounts of this, but pigs. It's thought that we first domesticated pigs about 8 or 9 thousand years ago.
Okay.
Um, and every pig you see today
That long
is,
ago. Wow.
yeah, there's arguments that it was the first domesticated animal out for food,
Okay.
domesticated food animal. I think the human domestication and relationship with dogs goes way deeper than 8,000 years. But in terms of a domesticated food source, there's arguments that pigs were the first
Okay.
to be domesticated. Um, but yeah, somewhere around 8 to 10,000 years ago, every pig on the planet you see today is is a direct descendant of Sus scrofa, which is the genus name for it's like the Russian wild boar. Uh, but much like every dog is a descendant of the wolf, which is,
Hmm.
if you've seen a Chihuahua, makes you scratch your head, right? But yes, for all intents and purposes, um, it's one big old
Yeah, it's hard to
animal. It's
believe.
one big breeded animal, and the variants that we see. Again, I point to analogies with dogs because you don't see quite the same variants of Chihuahua to wolf in the pig world,
Hmm.
but you do see variants: hair color, size, phenotype. Yeah, there's a mule foot. So most pigs are a cloven hoof. There's a mule foot hog that's got a solid hoof on the bottom versus a split toe. Um, but for all intents and purposes, um, all the pig varieties that you see today have descended from Sus scrofa.
And they've just been hybridized and mated to so that we have these
Yeah,
different varieties of pigs today. Yeah.
yeah, and you've got some that are hairier and some that aren't.
Yeah.
Again, part of our problem right now is most people's idea of a pig is this, hairless pink, Wilbur from Charlotte's Web. The Disneyfication
Yeah.
of pigs, which is fine. But most pigs are mammals and they're hairy and they share a great deal of biology with humans.
And they get big. I mean,
They can get big. They can get quite big. My breeding boar when we were farrowing pigs. So the name of our company is Farrow. When you're farming and and pr- getting mama pigs and daddy pigs together to make baby pigs, that's called farrowing. Um, a farrow as a noun. So as a noun, farrow refers to a litter of piglets.
Mm-hmm.
And as a verb, it refers to the act of sort of getting adult male and female pigs together to breed.
And pigs, I
Uh,
think you told me that they have these large litters, and they can do that. Was it several times a year?
oh, yeah. So natural gestation for pigs, this is part of the reason why, wild pigs are such a problem, is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days, which means
Wow.
that technically you could have 3 litters in a year, right? And your average litter size with domestic pigs, certainly I'm sure wild isn't that dissimilar. Your average litter size is 8 to 10 piglets,
Wow.
and a mother, a female. So everyone's heard the term sow. So a sow is the term for a female pig that has had a litter. A gilt. So a gilt, just for pig terminology for those that are paying attention, a gilt is a female pig that has not had a litter yet,
I haven't heard
right?
that one.
Yeah. So just like a boar is an adult intact male,
Okay.
and a barrow is a non-intact male, just like you've got bulls and steers in cow world. A steer is a male beef that doesn't have his testicles anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So boar and barrow. Barrow is
I
the
see.
fixed male term, and gilt is the I have not had a baby or a litter female term. And so female pigs can be sexually fertile. I think as early as like 4 months old. 4 months old,
Interesting.
they can technically have a litter. So again, you think about
Yeah.
so you wake up January, you have a litter of pigs. By the time you get to August or September, if you had any girls in the litter, they're able to get pregnant,
Now, do
right?
pigs
And
do they inbreed? Is
um,
that a good thing, or what goes on there?
I would say that inbreed's probably not the right term. Um,
Well,
they're gonna. Well, I mean,
like brother and
they
sister,
breed.
do they get together,
Uh,
or would they in
I've
nature?
I've never asked. In nature, yeah, of course they would.
Yeah.
But in nature, you've got other factors. You've got the dominant male, and who is that? If it's dad, and it's not brother sister. It might be father daughter,
I gotcha.
right? Or mother son. I mean, there's a lot of nature's kind of quirky, man.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got, rival gangs of roaming pigs, and who's going to slip in and perpetuate the species. Um,
But
but yeah,
as
I
the
mean,
hog father, you make sure nothing gets out of control, right?
well, I mean, that's your job, is to take this natural system and massage it, and also, you want your animals to thrive, okay? And in nature, is a pig thriving if the sow is pregnant for, pretty much the entire year because she's constantly
Yeah.
breeding? No, absolutely not. And so in an agricultural setting, I have a responsibility to either cut the boys off or separate the boys from the girls during most of the year, right?
Mm,
Yeah, that's the that's the
I
role
gotcha.
I play, right? Is so the boys can be over here and happy, and the girls can be over here and happy, and every now and then we get everyone together for a party, and then once the party's over, then it's back to your places,
Hmm.
everyone. So um so yes, pigs are my favorite animal. They're highly intelligent. They will do things to the land that, a pig is born to root, to dig around and root its nose and the cartilage and if you've ever seen a pig doing what a pig does, it is an absolute miracle what they're able to do with their snout, and that can be an asset and it can be a liability. Okay. And so if you're, this organized destruction, the land needs massaging
Oh,
and
I see.
destruction.
Yeah.
Just like your garden needs tilling. Okay. Things have got to be
Yeah.
turned.
They can clear things up pretty well, but they can also overdo that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If for anyone that's listening, and you may know this, Brian, if you've ever had backyard chickens, okay. If anyone ever's grown up with backyard chickens, if you kept and chickens are monogastric omnivores, pigs are monogastric omnivores. So this is I know they look a lot different, they act a lot different, but their impact on the land is the same. And if you've ever had backyard chickens and they stayed in the same place for a month, you had zero grass in that place, because every time a new little shoot of grass would come up, they eat it and it's gone, because they love fresh snippets of grass. And so if you leave any animal in the same place for too long, it's not good. Back to that bison herd, right? They were never in the same place for more than a day, ever. And so, in a properly managed agricultural environment, you not only allow your animals to move, give them lots of space and room, but you also manage them in such a way where you allow the land to rest. Because in nature, the land would get a lot of rest because the predators would push these animals to the next
I
field,
never thought
or
of
the
that
next
aspect. They always have predators on their trail.
Of course. And what else did the predators do? The predators would call sick and injured animals.
They would what?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, cull.
Cull. Yeah.
Yes, I got you.
Kill, devour.
Yeah.
These are some of the things you learn when you're looking at a herd. If you've got a really good herd of beef, and you want to know who's sick, just watch the herd, because they'll push the mama that's not feeling so well. They'll push them to the outside of the herd.
Really?
They'll push them. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Because that's how it works. You're the slow one. See ya. Darwinism at its finest. Darwinism at its finest. Anyway, so yeah, pigs are my favorite.
And your company, Farrow, you use lard as the basis of all of your products. Is that right?
We lead with lard. We use three fats. So we use lard, which is the rendered. This is why we talked about this earlier. It's the rendered subcutaneous fat from a pig.
Okay, so with beef for tallow, we use the visceral fat, which is the fat by the kidneys. But with lard, we use the actual subcutaneous fat because they have a lot more of it, I'm assuming.
Yes. So pigs, monogastric omnivore.
Monogastric, so one stomach.
One stomach.
Okay.
And they do not metabolize their environment through fermentation. That's over here in ruminant. That's the whole term. So ruminant, if you hear that term used to reference a cow, it's because they have these multi-chambered stomachs, the first stomach of which is called the rumen. And when a cow or a goat or any herbivore eats, the first place that grass or whatever they're eating, the first place it goes is the rumen.
Okay.
And it will think about like a big old sauerkraut pot. Okay.
Yeah.
And it will sit in there and it will ferment. And then if you've ever heard the term a cow chewing its cud, okay, so I fill my rumen up and then I go find a nice shady spot somewhere and I sit down and now that it's ruminated, right? And it's I've had all these digestive enzymes working to break that stuff down. I will regurgitate it, chew it to break it down even further, and then swallow it and send it to the rest of my multi-chambered stomachs, where then I can more readily and easily metabolize
Interesting. Yeah.
those nutrients. With a monogastric omnivore, ergo a pig, it goes into the first stomach and that's where it stays. And it goes, just like humans, it breaks down further in the stomach, then it gets down to the small intestines, and that's in the pig's small intestines is where the pig is pulling, metabolizing and pulling the nutrients that it needs into its body. Okay.
And that's one reason why you like lard over tallow, because pigs are monogastric. And does that mean they're more similar to humans, or their fat is more similar to humans?
It's bioidentical to humans, basically.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's so close. It's so close. So the natural oil that humans make is called sebum. Sebum is the oil that humans produce in our glands,
And it comes out
lard
out on the skin, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, that rub your nose. That's sebum.
Okay.
Um,
Is that the same as the subcutaneous fat in our skin, under our skin?
no,
It's different.
no, it's similar. It's similar.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but
I'm
no,
guessing it comes from that, right?
it comes from the gland.
Yeah.
It comes from the gland. It's
Okay.
produced by our glands. Anyway, so lard is the most similar substance on the planet, endogenous substance on the planet, to human sebum.
Wow.
I find myself saying, so the swine is divine, but the
The
lard
swine
is hard.
divine,
But the lard is hard.
The lard is hard.
Yes, because monogastric animals, humans being another monogastric mammal, monogastric animals are very, very keen at metabolizing their environment and their diet and storing it in their fat. Okay. So if you raise a pig in a terrible situation, feed it, microplastic infused, ground up grocery store waste, right? It's going to take all of that and it's going to metabolize it and store it in its subcutaneous fat, which is why I tell people don't eat store-bought pork. It's terrible. I mean, if you got to, you got to, right? And trim off the fat and eat the meat and all those fun things. But the point is, if you raise a healthy, happy, plenty of sunshine, if you raise a pig in that manner, it almost irregardless of what you feed them, right? Just like humans. What do you want? Do you want the closet Brian with filet mignon for 3 months, or do you want to have to eat some Snickers bars, but you get to play outside every day and go swimming and run and roll around in the grass, right? Like, pick your poison here, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So in that environment where pigs get to do root, if pigs have exposure to the land where they can root, it is the thing God put them on the planet to do. It makes them happiest. Okay. So root, plenty of sunshine, they metabolize and store vitamin D from the sun the same way humans do, right? And so if you do that, then you have created a fat that is not only unbelievably awesome for cooking and frying, but it's also incredibly efficacious for the healing and nourishing and feeding our skin, which is our largest organ, right? It's our largest organ, and it eats things. If you don't think it eats things, I would invite you to roll around in poison ivy sometime and see what happens when oil gets on your skin, right? It eats things. And so let's feed it properly.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, or at least one thing was, we know that toxins are stored in our fat, and this goes for tallow too. But is that a concern when we're putting lard or tallow on our bodies, or does that go back to what you just said about staying away from store-bought stuff and making sure you're sourcing properly?
Sure. So Couple of points of clarity. Tallow is visceral fat. Lard is subcutaneous. And so
Okay.
one of the reasons, if you look at animal-based skincare, okay, I'm in the animal-based skincare market, and I'm the only guy really leading with lard. Most of the other brands, and there's some fantastic brands in the space. Van Man, Toops and Co., Clara and Fritz. These are just a couple of my allies against big skincare. They're all using tallow,
Yeah.
all of them, and tallow's fantastic. Tallow tallow is protected in two ways. Is protected from potentially nefarious dietary or environmental factors. It's protected in two ways. The first way is it's visceral fat. So it's inside. The fat is a storage. It's not a storage fat, it's a protection fat. So the biology of that animal is not to send things directly to the visceral fat,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So that's critical. And then, good Lord, I lost my place here. Two
Well,
things.
yeah. What protects?
Oh,
Yeah.
how ruminant animals metabolize their environment and their food, right? It's a completely different process than over here in monogastric land. Okay. So tallow presents an animal fat that is less likely to be toxic for you
Okay.
because of the source of the fat and also the way the animal it's from metabolizes its diet. Okay, so tallow is fantastic, especially when you put it up against, petrolatum, any of these other petroleum derivatives, fake oils, seed oils. Seed oils are making a huge splash in skincare, have forever,
Yeah.
right? So tallow is a way better option than all of that junk, right? And we use tallow in our product. Lard, if you raise the pig properly, again, because we share so much more biology with a pig, the pH, the lipid balance, all these things that are just an absolute spot on match to human biology. And so it's a better fit. Now there's one other fat we use, not to get everyone super sideways here, but we also use, if you go to our website and look up the ingredients, there's leaf lard.
That was my next question.
So leaf lard is the pig equivalent to tallow.
So it's the visceral fat.
Correct.
The inside fat.
Yep. And leaf lard was a prized fat. Still is to this day, but again, nobody knows what lard is anymore. It was prized for frying and baking because of the visceral nature of the fat in a pig. It did not have a smell or a flavor, right? Again, because pigs store their environment. We've heard of like the acorn finished Spanish ham, and whatever a pig's eating in the last couple of months of its life, especially if it's eating at excess, you're going to taste and smell that in the fat, the subcutaneous fat on that pig, not in the visceral fat. So we have a facial product, face food, and we have a skin food, which is sort of a neck down body product. And I use, because if you look at the labels, it's so funny. This is the most common question I get. If you look at the label, the ingredients are exactly the same between those two products. And it's like, well, the ingredients are the same. Yes, they are. But the ratios are way different. We use a lot more leaf lard in our facial product.
Okay.
Because it's up by the nose, if you don't know this, animal fat, there's really not a lot of smell to it. Tallow is actually the most odorous fat we use. Lard doesn't have.
We're going to do a little show and tell. I got a couple products that I have, and one of them is a tallow, and it does smell like beef.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess that has to do with how many times they render it, or is that right?
It can be, yeah. It's how you render. It's method of render.
Because I have another one, and it doesn't smell at all.
Yeah. Well, so in the harvesting, because I literally just What's today? Today's Thursday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So Sunday? Yeah. Saturday and Sunday of this week, I rendered tallow. So I took the visceral fat from cows
Mm-hmm.
and cut it up, ground it up, and rendered it. And hardly any smell. Hardly any smell.
Not even
But
when you're first doing it, there's not much smell there at all.
not a ton.
Okay.
But here's the point I'm making. I'm also going through that. Imagine a grocery bag. Okay, take a grocery bag or a Ziploc bag or something like that, and fill it about 2/3 of the way up with water. Okay, or silly putty. Fill it with silly putty. Okay, or maybe like the slime. Don't the kids have the slime these days?
Okay.
Fill a gallon Ziploc bag 2/3 of the way with slime and zip it up and like feel that. That's sort of how, again, tallow or leaf fat from a pig, that's how it looks. It's this solid casing, and inside the casing is the fat.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm grinding it, because it renders much better when you grind it, I will trim, and you get a hunk of meat. There's some muscle when they're pulling that out of the carcass. Sometimes it's not as trimmed as you'd like it.
Sure.
Right. And so I try to be very, very diligent in trimming my fat so that there's not a lot of meat in the grind, because all you're doing then is cooking the meat, which, by the way, it's delicious. You're cooking the meat in fat, but it will impart that smell to the fat. And so
I see.
I try to be very, very diligent in trimming any red material from the fat when we go to render it.
Yeah, I like your face food product, and I'm surprised that it really didn't have any smell at all. Well, there is a smell, but I actually like the smell, and I got the unscented one.
Yep.
But I have the empty jar, and every once in a while I'll actually open up the jar and take a little sniff because there's an interesting smell there. And I don't know what it is. Maybe the combination of the lard and tallow, but
does it? I'm curious. Nice. Does it get a little acidic? Do you feel like it's got any harshness to it after it's sat there for a while?
The smell?
Yeah.
Well, this is an empty jar. And you're saying after it's sat empty?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it completely empty? Did you wash it out, or is there any residual in there?
No. I cleaned that sucker out. It's bone dry. I didn't wash it out. I mean, I scooped it out.
You scooped it all out. Yeah. It's that good.
There's not a drop left in there.
I love it. Well, Aaron, again, I'm putting this talk together to tell people about lard because it blows my mind how little people know. People think, and this is a fair assumption on the consumer's part, they think lard's going to smell like bacon grease, which is fair because the most common pork fat most people are exposed to now are bacon drippings. And so everyone thinks that lard, that's lard. No, that's bacon fat.
Yeah, the one of the beef tallow products that I have smells kind of like that smell.
Yeah. So
let me go grab that for a second. I just want to show you.
Yeah, go grab it.
All right. So we got a little show and tell here. We got a couple products. So this one is a beef tallow product. This has tallow and honey. It's supposed to be. I thought it was whipped tallow, but this one has the texture is a little. Rough. Not that it's grainy, but it's it's kind of like pasty. So I don't like, this is the one that smells like beef tallow. It's $20 for this thing. This one is also $20, a big jar, but it's a whipped tallow, and it has this texture is very nice. It's light, it's airy, it's spread on well. So I like this whipped tallow. And then we have I'm still waiting on my re-up of the farro, but
Oh boy, you did clean that thing out, didn't you? Ah,
Like I said, I like to sniff it once in a while. But um, the tallow, I think, out of all three, I really like the texture the most. I've described it to you before as being spongy, and I keep this stuff at my side, and I just put it on whenever I can. But what happens exactly when you put tallow on your skin? Is it absorbed right into the skin? Is it's slowly absorbed? Is there a like a recycling of fats in the body that goes on? Do we know what happens there?
the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
The more nuanced answer. So, and you said tallow, not lard. So just to be clear, we use tallow in our products. So tallow, folks, if you don't know, tallow at room temperature is rock hard. Think. Oh gosh, we remember the whole saturated fat is if it's solid at room temperature, it's going to be solid in your veins. You remember that whole anti-fat phobic
Yeah.
marketing ploy? Yeah. So coconut oil, God forbid, coconut oil, because at room temperature it's solid. But tallow is a lot like that at room temperature. It's it's uh, it's pretty solid.
Okay.
And so with the product that you have that's really whipped, so I'm guessing if it's creamy, then they've really whipped a
Yeah.
lot of air into that, which is great. And tallow is advantageous for that reason. Is at room temperature, it's going to hold its form. Okay, so that whipped tallow bomb that you've got, I'll bet if you went and stuck that in your oven at 200 degrees for about 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
the jar would be half full
Yeah.
because it would melt and all the air would come out of it.
That's what I
It's
was
funny.
thinking because this is a pretty big jar for $20, you know?
Well, yes. I mean, ice cream, it's no different than ice cream. Really creamy ice cream has about 40% air whipped into it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It makes it creamier. Makes it creamier. So our face food, you like our unscented face food. It's big fan. I appreciate that.
That's the one.
Yep. So face food is made with more leaf lard. Leaf lard, again, has similar qualities to tallow, where at room temperature, it's more viscous. It's closer to solid than liquid. Lard at room temperature is borderline liquid. Okay. So early on in the evolution of farro, my earliest face foods, I would whip it. Like I would run it through the mixer and whip air into it, and it just, I mean, Brian, just similar to your experience with that tallow, it was just this unbelievably creamy
Yeah.
experience, right? And so I'd fill these jars up, and it's kind of hard to, because you had to, it wouldn't fall in. This was this like whipped. It was almost like frosting for
Exactly.
a cake.
Exactly.
I mean, it was just awesome.
Yeah.
The problem was, I'd fill this jar and I'd cap it and I'd ship it off to somebody. And if if it got warm at any point during the shipping process, that jar would show up half full
Really?
because it would melt.
Yeah.
And again, that's the difference between lard and tallow. Tallow has a lot more room to get warm.
I gotcha.
A lot more room to get warm. And so, again, back to why tallow and not lard. Well, tallow's great. Okay, back to your original question, like what happens when we put it on our skin? Well, a couple things happen. One is mammal to mammal, our skin goes, I can dig that, right? That feels right. Doesn't feel wrong. Okay. It's from one animal to another, God bless you. Okay. As opposed to all the other fats in skincare, right? Which are, cocoa butter or shea butter or and coconut oil, olive oil. And those are the good ones, right? But they're all plant-based fats. And then over here, you've got, how many different petroleum derivatives, petrolatum, which is the main ingredient in Neosporin, right?
Mm.
And petroleum jelly, right? So you got all these other fats. You're not a coconut. You're not a petroleum derivative. You're not
Last
a
time I
shea.
checked.
You're not. You're just not. And so I'm not here to bemoan or belittle those ingredients as potentially beneficial to your skin. But the brass tacks of it is you're not a damn coconut. You're an animal. You're a mammal, and specifically you're a monogastric omnivore,
Hmm.
right? And so what happens when tallow goes on our skin? I think our skin goes, "Thank you very much. This is good." When lard goes on our skin, I think our skin says, "Thank you a little bit more. This looks really familiar."
Hmm.
Like this is from the same animal that we use their parts in human bodies. Like, talk to a heart surgeon. They're using the valve from a pig's heart to repair the valve of a human heart. Talk to someone that was, we pull, I forget how many pharmaceutical drugs, uh, you know, uh, um, hormones that we can harvest from pigs and use in humans. I mean, it's
Hmm.
it's it's fascinating. Um,
Yeah, you've definitely done a lot to change my view about pigs, and that's going to be my last couple of questions. I know you got to go, um, but a lot of people have, I guess, the feeling I had about pigs is that you know they have worms. You get worms from pigs, and also there's the religious resistance to pig products. Can we touch on those a little bit?
sure.
First, is the worm problem with pigs a thing? Have you seen that in your time raising pigs, whether you're eating them or being around them? Is that an issue?
Yeah, so I think these both stem from the same place. So the
Okay.
religious context and also the environmental viral load capacity of a pig. Okay, they can get worms, they can get this. Um, you've eaten out at restaurants before. You
Yes, sir.
seem like a reasonably seasoned diner to me. Some
Very,
nice
very
restaurants,
rarely,
right?
but I,
Yeah, but every now and then you like to treat yourself, right? Have you ever seen pork tartare on a menu?
I have not.
No. Okay. How about chicken tartare?
I have
Ever seen
not.
it? Okay.
No.
Pigs and chickens are monogastric omnivores. Okay. Now, we
Okay.
didn't know what a monogastric omnivore was 5,000 years ago, right? Those terms did not exist.
Right.
I'm guessing they did not exist 10,000 years ago. Okay. What did exist 5 or 10,000 years ago was trigonosis.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a pathogen carried by pigs that if you don't properly cook the meat, you get sick.
So that's real.
Oh, hell yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
Trichinosis is no joke, man.
You've seen it personally? Have you seen
I've never
people?
seen it. I've just read tons about it. And,
Yeah.
you don't undercook pork. You don't undercook chicken. Have you ever seen chicken tartare on a menu? No. Because of,
I occasionally have raw chicken. I eat raw chicken.
okay, well,
Um,
more power to you. More power to
but
you.
it's obviously it's there. I get your point. I've never seen raw chicken or raw pork on a menu anywhere.
But
But
you've
of
seen
course we
steak
do
tartare,
see, yeah, of course we do see
right?
steak tartare.
That's right. Of
You can have a rare steak or black and
course.
blue. I
So
gotcha.
if 5,000 years ago, okay, 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, most of these stories, you go read the Bible, you go read the Quran, read any major religious text,
Hmm.
okay? The stories in that book are hundreds of thousands of years old.
Okay.
Passed down, passed down. I mean, the story of Abraham is an epic battle of just like passing stuff. The Ten Commandments are a distillation of Abraham's, battle with like, what do I do? What do I do? Right. Anyway, I'm getting a little far afield here. 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, you're going through the woods, hunting and gathering. You got your spear and you kill a pig. You're going to eat that pig. And hopefully you figured out fire. But if not, you're going to eat that pig anyway. And even if you had fire, are you going to cook it enough? What happens? If that pig has trichinosis, either you're getting sick or your cousin's getting sick or your wife's getting sick, we're getting sick. So before we understand monogastric omnivore, viral load, before we had a greater understanding of cooking temperatures and things of that nature, the easiest thing to do is to make a story up that this is a dirty animal and you shouldn't eat it. Which is, again, we see this, cross culturally.
Yeah.
Why do the Hindus, hold the cow in such reverence? There's a lot to that. I mean, how many animals have we been able to domesticate that can feed us without dying? Right? Milk from a cow, milk from a sheep, milk from a goat. Fascinating. But my point is, before we had all the science, okay, the threat was real. Okay. And the threat of undercooked pork. And again, we're talking about an animal that is highly adaptive in any environment. Okay. Now, pigs were introduced to North America. At least this is historically what we understand to be. Pigs were introduced to North America by the Spaniards and some of the early settlers, Columbus included, right? Because the pig as a species was Eurasian in its it's
not natural to the Americas?
My understanding is it's not.
Okay.
Now you may have had some wackadoo crazy, I've never heard of it. We would have maybe likely found it, but the pig Sus scrofa
that comes
is native to Russia.
Russia. Got it.
And again, all the earliest records of pig domestication are from the Russian European continent. And so, again, I don't, in terms of the history and the land bridge, and I don't know all of that, but
so you're saying that because the chicken and the pig are monogastric, that they're more susceptible to worms or parasites? Is that the reason you think?
I believe so. Yeah. Because they're omnivores.
They're omnivores.
So they're going to eat anything.
Okay.
Herbivores don't eat anything. Herbivores don't eat dead herbivores. Humans created mad cow disease because some genius decided that we can feed cows dead cow. Hey guys, here's a great way to save a little money and recycle. Right? We created mad cow disease. In nature, show me an herbivore that eats meat. Nope. Doesn't happen.
Interesting.
Right? So so these stories, this aversion to pork, it's a dirty animal. And look, fair enough. Look at a pig. If you don't understand a pig and you watch a pig, oh my God, yeah, they eat cow pies and they roll around in their own feces and they're constantly covering themselves in mud. On the outside, to an untrained eye, they look like the dirtiest, nastiest animal on the planet. And when you throw on top of that, hundreds of thousands of years of, if you eat this animal, remember, we don't understand undercooked. Don't eat that animal. It's dirty. It will hurt you. Right? That's what you do. You make a story to help perpetuate your species.
Yeah.
And in the case of this story, it's, repent and don't eat that animal. So anyway.
So farro is cooked to temperature. Is that what you're saying?
We bring all of our fat to an appropriate temperature during the rendering process. Yes, we are trichinosis free. So if you've got a jar of farro and you're in a real pinch, then calorically, every jar of face food's probably got 250 calories of stored energy, just ready and willing for you
I was
to eat
thinking
it.
that. I was like, this you could eat this stuff.
I wouldn't suggest it.
Right.
It's totally edible.
Yeah.
It's totally edible. But it seems like a tremendous waste of resources.
I'd say.
But like I said, in a pinch, of course, absolutely. I would even say if you can't put it in your mouth, you probably shouldn't put it on your skin.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. Well, thank you, Mr. Charles. This was fun. That was very educational. Let's see.
I enjoyed it, man. Yeah.
Is there any history of people putting lard on their skin that you know of? Because I know Native Americans, I believe they used bear fat on their skin with the red sediment that they used to make their face red. I think it was bear fat that they used, right?
That's how you know pigs weren't in North America.
That's a good point. They would have used pigs.
No. I promise you.
They wouldn't have to kill these big scary bears.
Yeah.
But that might be a good.
No, there's I'm trying to remember that. I'm compiling all this stuff for this talk. There was a saint, a Catholic saint priest and he was very famous. They called him the porcine saint, or the saint of the pig. And this is, I want to say this is around 12 or 1300, 1400, something like that. Anyway, he was sort of a recluse. He would travel a lot. And rumor has it, one of his specialties was healing people's skin. And he often used pig skin and pig fat to do that. And so there was this like, if one, then two situation where they sort of dubbed him the saint of pigs. But no, I mean, Brian, the most fascinating part about this journey for me has been the absolute clear understanding that prior to, I would say, the late 1700s, really all the way up through the late 1800s. Prior to that, humans have been fascinated with skin for as long as humans have been around.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this. I mean, the Egyptians were absolutely fascinated with, golden skin and skin health, and everyone's forever has always been, and they should be, because, skin is like the human outward billboard, right? So if you got to rewind the clock, right? Contextually, your skin was a very quick way for someone else to ascertain if you were healthy or not.
Sure.
Right? It's our billboard. Okay, so we've been fascinated with it forever. However, the skincare industry, look at the history of the skincare industry. Who was it for?
Who was it for?
Who was it for?
The skincare
Who did the
industry.
skincare industry cater to in 1750?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. I don't know.
Who did the skincare industry cater to in Egyptian or Roman times? The elite.
Okay, so like royalty.
The elite.
Yeah.
the elitist of the elitist of the elite. And why? Ask yourself that. Why were the elite? First of all, they had the means to pay someone to go acquire these rare ingredients,
Yeah.
right? They had the means. But more importantly, they were so far removed from the daily task or weekly task of eviscerating an animal and creating it, turning it into food, that their skin was far removed from ongoing, regular exposure to animal fat. The king did not prepare his own meals, right? Cleopatra did not, she wasn't cutting open the antelope to feed the family. So the elite have always had, gout. Gout was reserved for the wealthy. Gout is an overconsumption of sugar disease, right? The skincare industry was reserved for the elite because nobody else really had a problem. Because again, if you were lucky on a weekly basis, you and everyone else in your family were elbow deep in animal fat all the time. Fast forward to the turn of the century, late 1800s. Again, I'm doing this talk. I'm getting this talk ready. Lard. It was all lard. I mean, I've got pictures. My cousin's a junker. He collects things, and they collect lard cans, antique lard cans. I have cans, Brian. I have cans. You know the popcorn tins, the holiday popcorn tins, like the, what are they? Cheese, plain, and caramel popcorn.
Yeah.
Think about how big those tins are, right? Lard tins from the turn of the century.
Really?
Right? These 50-pound, 30-pound. He's got 100, and it's the label's still there. 120-pound can, handles and all, of lard.
How much lard can you get from one pig?
Depends on the pig.
Depends on the size.
Pig. But I would say a market pig. So we're market weights, 275 to 325 pounds. You're going to eviscerate, so we'll call it 200 pounds. I'm going to say, we'll keep it in terms of pounds, 20 to 40 pounds of rendered fat from one pig.
Okay.
Yeah. You split that up, it's probably 30 to 40% of that is leaf lard, and then the remainder would be lard from the subcutaneous fat, and then again, all of that's sort of how much fat do you want to leave on that pork chop? How much do you want to trim off versus leave on? Yeah. But yeah, so. At the turn of the century, first of all, we didn't have grocery stores.
I don't eviscerate animals, so I can just use farrow.
I do all of that for you.
My little farrow thing here, and I'll be okay?
I think you'll be fine. Cracked cuticles and hands and face, and because again, you got to remember a couple hundred years ago, and it's on your hands, and you wipe your face off. I mean, we were just constantly exposed to animal fat.
Yeah.
Constantly. And again, I don't have to explain my product to butchers. I don't have to explain my product to deer hunters. Anybody that's intimately involved in the carcass of an animal.
They play around with the stuff.
Of course. Well, I mean, they just understand that. I mean, your skin's never felt better than after it's had prolonged exposure to animal fat.
My neighbor, oh my goodness, I was telling him about your product, and I actually I got this tallow in the mail, so I brought it over to him and I said, hey, you want to try some? I touched his skin. It was like, oh my gosh, so dry. I thought it was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
like fall off when I touched it. It was like so. I don't know how people live like that, but I mean
I'm
that's a
convinced.
different problem. But it was I was
Yeah,
just amazed.
I'm convinced
He's
that
like, yeah, in the
99,
winter it gets like that. I'm like, oh my goodness, you got to take care of
yep,
that.
99% of the itching that all humans experience is due to dry skin.
Hmm.
All, so think about a mosquito bite. Does a mosquito bite itch?
Sure.
Yes. Why does it itch? It itches because you you have this bite that swells up on your skin, right? And if your skin is dry, then a little dry. Then what you have, what does that whelp represent? It represents some micro cracking on a microscopic level of your skin. And I know this because I've tested it. Like
Hmm.
my poor kids. So I call them my VPs, Scott and Adeline. They're now 9 and 11, but they've been with the company from the beginning. And it did not matter. It was like mosquito bite. Here, let's put a little cream on it. Sunburn. Let's put a little cream on it. Chigger bites. Let's put a little cream on it. And so I have been through. For those that don't know what chiggers are, there's these little bitty microscopic biting bugs that when they get on you, they spread like wildfire,
Hmm.
and it's incredibly itchy and painful, and it takes forever to get rid of them. You've got to it's tough. But I went through a bout with chiggers where I, I hardly itched at all. And it was because I was constantly making sure that my skin stayed elastic, right? Elasticity is
Yeah.
very, very important to our skin. And
That was
so,
the opposite of my neighbor's skin. I mean, like I said, it was like, I don't know if you describe it as sandpaper or just like very brittle for sure. It's crazy.
well, Brian, there's a bunch of common plagues today, right? I can tell you that 90% of the population walking around has dry skin. I can tell you that for three reasons. Our diet, poor diet. Okay, we over sanitize, right? We're constantly stripping
That's true.
our
That's
natural
probably a
oil.
big
Oh
one.
my, it's a huge one.
Yeah.
It's a huge one, and we're not we don't have a healthy relationship with the sun anymore. We don't see early sun or late sun. Those are the three big factors in terms of, just like everyone's vitamin D deficient, right? We've seen this. So everyone's got chronically dry skin. We're vitamin D deficient, all these various things. And so, that's one of the reasons I have this product is it's seemingly I think it's one of the best ways to reverse dry skin
Hmm.
and feed your skin. The human body wants to be in a state of homeostasis. The human body wants to heal. You know this better than anybody. It wants very, very, very desperately to be awesome. You have to give it the tools to be awesome. Sometimes that means getting out of the way, and sometimes that means, switching out, bad habits for good, right?
Yeah.
And my point is simply that um, modern skincare, modern skincare, if anything, is drying and dehydrating your skin faster because of the compounds they use, because of the chemicals that they allow in our skin. Because there's endocrine disrupting compounds and
Hmm.
you know not non-human biologically identical fats. I mean, there's just a million reasons um, why our skin is in such poor shape.
Yeah.
And again, it, the today is amazing, right? To be alive in 2024 is out of this world. And how many people do you know that
As
have
long
to
as you're
go
healthy.
hunt and well, yeah, for sure. But You're gonna love it. Here's my opening question to contextualize things. Here's my opening question for this. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't. I don't think I can. Because I really want this question to pop. I don't know if when is this
I,
airing?
there's probably not going to be a lot of people watching this.
Here's my opening question at this
Unfortunately,
talk
I don't have quite the following yet.
I listen, man. I'm proud of you.
You might change that for me though, Charles. You're quite the character.
So my opening question is, okay, guys, show of hand. Because you got, when it comes to lard and sort of rewind, you have to contextualize things, and myself included, it's damn near impossible for anyone today to contextualize what it was like to live in America in 1904. Really? Like hardly any automobiles, no running water, no HVA, like literally it's hard. Anyway, so here's my opening question. It's like, okay, everybody in the room, because we got to contextualize things. Show of hands, how many of you have driven a car in the last month? Well, what's going to happen? Everyone raises their hand. There might be that one guy or gal that doesn't raise their hand. You're like, your hand's not up. They're like, I live in New York City. I don't own a car. I Uber and taxi and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. 1 out of 100, you're the outlier. Got it. Okay. All right, everyone in the room, keep your hands up if in the last month you have slaughtered and butchered a pig, and watch all the hands go down, except for maybe one guy over in the corner like me. They're like, well, butcher. What do you mean you butchered? Well, I run a farm. Okay, so outliers on both ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Rewind the clock 120 years.
I was wondering
And
where
that's
you were
exactly.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
You literally invert the number.
Yeah.
Because cars were that rare, and everyone ate pork and butchered pork and was intimately involved in the process. So, yeah,
That's good. Well, when is that? When is your talk at KetoCon?
I think it's it's May the 31st, June 1st, and June 2nd are the 3 days of Hack Your Health.
Okay.
I
Not too
think
far
I'm
out.
speaking on Saturday. I'm on a regenerative ag panel as well. I think that might be
nice.
Friday. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Very nice. Well, thanks again, Charles. And people can find you at farrow.life, right?
Farrow.life. Yes, and
Farrow.
.life.
Farrow,
Yep.
and we learned today that a farrow is a litter of pigs.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. As a noun. It's a litter of pigs.
Or you can
as a verb, it is
farrow.
That's right.
Yeah,
When you bring this is why it's such a fitting name. When you bring pigs into life, so we have birthed a lard-based skincare company.
Well, I'm a big fan, Charles, and you really did change my perspective on pigs. I didn't think I would be using lard on my skin, but I'm a big fan.
Well, I'm a fan of yours, Brian. It was great. I'm really, really excited that our paths crossed in Florida a couple months ago, and would be delighted to come back on and anytime, and certainly appreciate everything you're doing to push the needle forward.
A wealth of information. I appreciate you, and happy traveling this week. You're going down to the farm, and you're just going to hang out down there?
There's a so the Harris family started CFAR, which is the Center for Agricultural Resilience. It's a nonprofit organization they started a couple years ago, and so this is a CFAR summit, and they've asked me to come speak at the summit on lard and tallow, and so I'm going to do that, and then
nice.
Stick around in Atlanta over the weekend. My son's got a baseball game, and so we're gonna do that after.